The question that shook the White House. Picture this. It's a regular Tuesday morning. Coffee brewing, news anchors shuffling papers, another routine political panel discussion about to begin. But in less than an hour, one woman with a simple folder would ask a question so devastating that it would send the entire White House into panic mode. Her name is Jasmine Crockett, and she didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. She didn't even name names. But what she did was far more dangerous than screaming. She told the truth. The setup. The studio lights flicked on 4 Capitol Circuit Live. Just another morning show. Another political roundtable. The panel looked typical. 2 media analysts, a former Republican strategist named Cole, and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, seated calmly at the end. Host Bryant Keegan opened with his usual polished greeting, ready to discuss campaign finance reform. Nothing controversial. Nothing that should have made headlines. But Jasmine sat there in her crisp gray suit, looking relaxed yet focused, like someone holding back a card she'd only play at the moment called for it. The conversation started predictably. Talk about private fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago, anonymous donations, the usual political theater. Cole chuckled about constitutional crises over cocktail hours. The other panelists threw around their talking points. Standard stuff. Then Bryant turned to Jasmine. Congresswoman Crockett, what do you think? Is this just another political routine, or is there something deeper at play? That's when everything changed. The moment Jasmine paused, took a breath, tilted her head slightly. When she spoke, her voice was gentle, almost conversational. I think we've all seen enough cocktail hours to know when something smells off. But then she continued, I recently received information about one of these so-called private donor events. This wasn't just handshakes and champagne. There were foreign business figures present, individuals who, under federal law, shouldn't be anywhere near a U.S. political fundraising function. You could feel the tension shift in the room. Cole sat up straighter. Bryant's eyes darted to the producer, but Jasmine wasn't done. I'm not speculating, she said, her voice firmer now. I have dates, names, email correspondence that shows conversations about donations before, during, and after this event. It's not hearsay. Bryant hesitated. Are you implying someone in the administration knew about this? I'm saying there was at least one high-ranking public figure in the room who should have asked more questions, but instead they sat at the head table. The studio went dead silent. Everyone knew exactly who she meant without her having to say the name. The Bombshell. When they returned from commercial break, the energy had completely shifted. Social media was already exploding. Clips were going viral. The hashtag head table was trending. But Jasmine wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Bryant tried to clarify. You're not accusing the First Lady of wrongdoing, correct? Jasmine looked at him evenly. I'm raising a question the public deserves to ask. Cole jumped in, voice tightening. If you're not accusing Melania Trump, why even bring her up? She brought herself up by being there. Jasmine answered calmly. No one forced her to sit in a room full of foreign billionaires while donation envelopes were being handed out. That's when Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. Since we're live and since I know some people will question my motives, I brought something. The color drained from the other panelists' faces. The evidence. This, Jasmine said, opening the folder, is a chain of emails between a White House advisor and an individual listed on a sanctions watch list. That individual attended the fundraiser in question. She turned the documents toward Bryant, who blinked down at them like he'd never expected receipts to be literal. I've already submitted this to the Ethics Committee, Jasmine continued. The reason I brought it here today isn't to grandstand. It's because I'm tired of this system treating truth like something fragile. When Cole protested that they couldn't verify the documents on the spot, Jasmine locked eyes with him. If you're more upset at the person telling you there's smoke than the people lighting matches, then you're not really upset about fire. The threat. Brian asked why she was bringing this up now in this way. Because I was warned not to, Jasmine said plainly. Someone tried to pressure my office last week. Told me I'd be making enemies I couldn't see coming. Are you saying the White House tried to intimidate you? I'm saying the fear has never served this country well, and I didn't run for office to stay quiet. Within minutes, every newsroom in the country was on high alert. Screenshots of email headers were flying around social media. The White House was scrambling to respond. The counterattack. By the time Jasmine left the studio, the outside world had caught fire. Reporters shouted questions as her SUV pulled away. Her assistant was juggling 2 phones, one for press, one for legal. They've issued a denial, her assistant said. The First Lady's office says you fabricated everything. They're threatening legal action for defamation. Jasmine looked out the window as DC blurred past. Did they say which part one lied about? They're not getting specific, just calling the whole thing false and malicious. That means they know it's true. Meanwhile, inside the White House, Melania Trump was pacing her office with clenched fists. She made me a target, she said sharply. I was a guest. I didn't organize anything. Why would she say that? She immediately posted on Instagram a polished photo with a caption reading, I have always held myself to the highest ethical standards. Attempt to drag my name into partisan attacks will fail. Truth will prevail. But the internet had already made its judgment. The escalation. That afternoon, 3 political watchdog organizations submitted formal inquiry requests to the Federal Election Commission. Even Fox News ran a headline. Did the First Lady sit in on an illegal donor meeting? The White House was in full damage control mode. Aides darted through hallways with files clutched under their arms. The atmosphere was tense, everyone understanding that Jasmine Crockett had lit a match that wouldn't go out. Then came the anonymous phone call to Jasmine's office. She answered an unlisted number. Silence. Then a man's voice, flat and menacing. You're in way over your head. Click. The line went dead. Jasmine stared at the phone. She didn't report the number. She just sat there, knowing this wasn't just about a donor dinner anymore. It was about power, perception, and who got control of the story, the testimony. The following week, Jasmine held a press conference. No podium, no teleprompter, just her standing outside her district office. I want to make one thing absolutely clear, she said. I did not accuse anyone of criminal behavior. I asked why a highly influential public figure was present at a private event that raised serious ethical questions. That's not slander. That's oversight. When asked if she was concerned about legal retaliation, she answered simply, no, because the law is on my side, and so is evidence. The story hadn't faded. It had grown, but it hadn't twisted into chaos like some predicted. Jasmine stayed consistent, answering questions clearly, repeating the same line. I raise what the public deserves to ask. That consistency changed everything. Commentators who initially dismissed her began acknowledging her strategy. She's not yelling, one analyst said, and that's exactly what makes her dangerous. The calm is the message, the impact. Within days, the Ethics Committee had no choice but to hold an emergency session. Public petitions reached over 120,000 signatures. Even Republican committee members announced they were open to reviewing Jasmine's documentation. Whistleblowers began coming forward quietly. Former Mar-a-Lago employees, junior event planners, people who had seen the guest list witness the conversations, but never had anyone willing to listen. Jasmine's approval ratings climbed, especially among younger voters and working-class women across party lines. She wasn't just winning politically. She was winning something deeper. Credibility. The real victory. 3 days after the committee opened its review, Jasmine found herself in a Philadelphia recreation center, speaking to a group of high school girls. No cameras, no security, just folding chairs in a circle. A 16-year-old raised her hand. Why don't more people do what you did? Jasmine leaned forward. Because it costs you. Every time you tell the truth in a room full of people who benefit from lies, you pay for it. Sometimes with your career, sometimes with your safety, always with your peace. Another student asked, so why do it? Because I couldn't sleep knowing I said nothing, and because the people who benefit from silence count on that silence to keep winning. Later, at a small town hall in her district, a grandmother approached her with a folded piece of paper. You won't remember me, but I came to your first rally. I didn't vote for you, I was skeptical. But what you did this week wasn't about politics. That was about right and wrong. I told my granddaughter, this is what grown-up courage looks like. The lesson, by the end of the week, everything had changed, yet everything looked the same. No grand resignations, no arrests, no dramatic breaking news. The world didn't shift overnight. It rarely does. But something deeper had cracked. Something in how people paid attention, in what they were willing to question. Standing at her office window, watching a group of school children tour the Capitol, Jasmine finally allowed herself to smile. Not out of pride, but out of peace. The job wasn't to destroy. The job was to reveal. Sometimes truth doesn't crash through the front door. Sometimes it just walks in quietly, sits down at the table, and asks one simple question: why were you there? And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Because in the end, it wasn't about shaming the First Lady. It was about reminding everyone that no one, regardless of their title, their marriage, or their position, is above the questions the rest of us are held to. Jasmine Crockett proved that you don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to be willing to speak the truth, even when everyone else is too afraid to ask the questions that matter. The question that shook the White House wasn't complicated. It was devastating in its simplicity. In a democracy, shouldn't everyone be accountable?